When you're looking for a new breakfast idea and you want something that's a little bit fancier than just scrambled eggs and sausage, this breakfast stromboli is going to be your go-to recipe. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today's recipe is for breakfast stromboli. And oh my goodness, it is so delicious. You're gonna love this one. And the best thing is you can change the fillings to suit your taste. So you don't have to use the sausage or the peppers or the onions. You can change it up any way you want. The other thing is you can make it up ahead of time and then bake it on the day that you want to serve it. So it's just a great recipe all the way around. First thing you need is some pizza dough. Now what I have here is my homemade pizza dough that is just finished proofing in the Ninja Foodie. So that dough recipe is the same one that I use in my garlic knot air fryer recipe. So I will link to that below. But basically you just need a pound of pizza dough. So if you want to go to the store and buy some pizza dough or go to your local pizzeria and ask them if you can buy a pound of their pizza dough, you can skip making it yourself. But it is super easy. It's just basically combining some flour, salt, yeast, a little bit of water and a little bit of olive oil into a stand mixer, kneading it with a dough hook for about 5 minutes, and then either proofing it on your counter or proofing it in the Ninja Foodie. You want it to proof until it's double in size. While that's happening, go ahead and make your eggs up. I use 6 large eggs, a half of a teaspoon of fine ground sea salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. I blended those in the blender for just about 15-20 seconds until they became light and fluffy. I added a 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream and I pulse blended. You don't want to go on a high-speed blend when you've got heavy cream in the blender or it can start to whip up on you. Then I melted 1 tablespoon of butter into a large 10-inch skillet and I poured in the egg mixture, put it on low, covered it, and let it cook for about 10 to 15 minutes until it's completely set all the way through. Now these eggs are completely set and they are ready for our stromboli. So I can go ahead and turn the heat off now. Now I'll let those sit in the pan until I'm ready to use them in the stromboli. You do want them to cool off some. So if you're just about ready to wrap your stromboli with the eggs, pop them into the refrigerator for a few minutes because you don't want the hot eggs to hit the dough or it will start to soften the dough too much and you'll have trouble rolling it. But we still have a ways to go with the prep for this recipe, so I'm just gonna leave them right there on the stove. You can also make your eggs a day ahead of time if you wanted to, and then just bring them out of the refrigerator about 30 minutes to an hour before you're gonna roll your stromboli so that they come to room temperature so that when you bake your stromboli, it's hot all the way through. All right, the next step is to saute some vegetables and sausage. Now I'm using bulk breakfast sausage, it's 1 pound. You could use any type of sausage that you like. If you don't like sausage, you can skip it. There's no problem with that. You can put just your vegetables and eggs in there, okay, if you didn't want to use any meat. But remember, the sausage has a lot of seasoning in it, so you may want to boost up your seasonings a bit if you're not going to use the sausage. You could also make up a pound of bacon if you prefer bacon. Go ahead and air fry or skillet or oven bake your bacon, however you like to make it. Make it super crispy because it will soften up some inside the stromboli, and then set that aside and you can use that in your stromboli instead of the sausage. And then I'm gonna add in 2 red bell peppers that I cut into about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch strips. That's how I want them in my breakfast stromboli, but you could dice them up. You could switch it out for green peppers. I mean, you could turn this into a spicy type of breakfast stromboli by adding some jalapeno peppers. So, get creative, use what you love. That equals 2 cups of strips. They were 2 medium-sized bell peppers. Then I have 1 large onion, which equals about 2 cups of sliced onion. Don't worry if you're a little bit shy. If you have just 1.5 cups, don't worry about that. If you dice it, you're not gonna have a full 2 cups, okay? Because it's gonna take up less volume. So if you're dicing up things, just go by 1 large onion, 2 normal-sized red bell peppers, so medium-sized red bell peppers. I'm gonna put those in. Now, we like to layer seasoning, so we're also gonna add some salt and pepper to the vegetables as they start to saute. I'm gonna add about a 1/2 teaspoon of fine ground sea salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. All right, once that starts to saute, we're gonna add in our bulk sausage, which is 1 pound. And I'm using just a mild sausage. That's what I prefer in this recipe, but you could use a spicy one, you could use maple, you could use whatever flavor that you love. In this recipe, I am gonna use smoked Gouda cheese. And you might have noticed there's this apple that's been hanging out. I'm actually gonna use apple in the filling too. Now I know that might be a little bit odd, but let me just tell you, the sausage, the peppers, the onions, the smoked Gouda, and the apple, and then this special sauce that we're gonna make, it's amazing. So I definitely hope you give it a try. But you can switch up the cheese. You can use shredded cheddar. You could use, an Italian blend, a Mexican blend. You can use whatever you want. It's no problem. What I like to do with the smoked Gouda, because of the way it melts, is I have 8 ounces of it, and I'm going to use half shredded in my sauce, and 4 ounces are going to go into the actual stromboli in strips, because I think that it melts really nice in the stromboli that way, but you could shred it all too. Makes no difference. If you want to do it into the strips like I am doing, just take little bits like this. All right, there we go. Now I'm gonna get the rest of this shredded for the actual sauce. And I don't cut my apple until just before we add it, because you don't want it to turn brown. And I leave the skin on, but you don't have to if you don't want to. All right, there we go. That's about 1.5 cups or so of the grated cheese. But when it comes to something like breakfast stromboli, it doesn't matter how much cheese you use. You can cheese it up all you want. All right, I've got my egg mixture here. Now what I'm gonna do, this is up to you, okay? You don't have to do this. But what I do is I cut it in half, and that's because of how long the stromboli is gonna be, and I want egg in every bite. So I just take it and cut it straight down the middle there. So I have 2 halves, just like this, that I can lay on the stromboli. Now I'm gonna throw these just right back in the pan here until we're ready to use them. In just a few minutes, the sausage is gonna be cooked all the way through in our pan, and the onions and peppers will be cooked to the texture that I like them, which is just with a little bit of a snap. You can always take it longer and make them softer if you want. No problems there at all. Once you remove your sausage, pepper, and onion mixture into a bowl, or like I did, a measuring cup, this is a 4-cup measuring cup, let it sit for a little bit. We want to collect these juices at the bottom because we're going to use those to make our sauce. And we're going to use some of the mixture as well. All right, the start of our sauce, or the flavor of our sauce, is going to come from the sausage and onions and peppers. So take out about 1.5 cups. I have a total of 4 cups here. So I'm using about a cup, between 1.5 cups and 2 cups. Just remember, you want to leave at least 2 cups of the mixture for your inside your stromboli. And then we're going to add in a cup of milk. Now, you could use some stock if you wanted to instead of milk. Like you could use some vegetable stock, or any kind of chicken stock, whatever you want. But I'm gonna keep this milky and cheesy and creamy, so we're gonna go with the milk. Now don't use heavy cream here, because like I said, if you go on a high speed blend with heavy cream, you're gonna end up getting a really thick sauce. That's not gonna be what we want in this recipe. So use something thinner like whole milk, skim milk, water and half would be fine. Water and cream would be fine. You just want to have 1 cup of a thin liquid in here. Now all of the juices have collected down in the bottom here, and we're going to transfer those to our frying pan. Once the juice is in your frying pan or your saute pan, you want to turn the heat on about medium, and we're going to add in some flour. Now I'm going to add in about a teaspoon at a time until it combines with the juices and the fat that's in the skillet right now. And then we will get in the mixture that we pureed up, and also some of that cheese and a little bit more milk if needed. You want to use just enough flour so that it combines with the fat and the juices that are in the pan. That makes kind of like a little bit of a paste. So we're making a firm roux right now that we will then start to thin out with our mixture that we had in the blender. I used a total of 1 tablespoon of flour. This will vary depending on how much juices and fat you have. You can always supplement it too with adding in a little bit more olive oil or a little bit more butter if you needed to get up to like 2 tablespoons of flour. That's perfectly fine. But we're going to see how this does with the 1 tablespoon of flour and those juices. Once all of your pepper, sausage, and onion mixture has been added, then you want to add in your shredded cheese. This sauce is absolutely delicious, but it is not the most attractive color. So to boost that a little bit, we're gonna add in about a tablespoon of dried parsley. You could use fresh parsley, you could use cilantro, you could use chives, anything you have that's gonna bring a little bit of green color to it. It's just gonna make it look a little bit more appetizing. Once your sauce is smooth and the cheese is completely melted, we are all done. You want to turn the heat off. Definitely taste it at this point. Make sure that it has a good flavor. You might need to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. You could add garlic to it. You could add whatever you want. Some garlic powder I would use, not fresh garlic, unless you added it in the beginning and cooked it a little bit, or it'll be a little too pungent. Now it's time to cut up the apple and put it into our sausage mixture. We can stir it in, and that will prevent the browning because we are almost ready to get our dough out and get our stromboli assembled. I'm not gonna remove the skin just because I don't like peeling apples if I can help it, and it doesn't make any difference in this recipe. It also doesn't make any difference what kind of apple you use. You could use anything from a Granny Smith to a Red Delicious. It's not gonna make any difference. To roll out the dough for your stromboli, you're gonna wanna have a large, clean surface, dry as well. And we're gonna put a little bit of flour right down here in the middle and kind of spread it around and get our dough out. And then we're gonna roll it so that it is in a large rectangle. Get a little bit of flour on both sides, just so it doesn't stick. You can add more, but you don't wanna incorporate too much flour into this, or you're gonna end up just having it be a little bit too tough of a dough. So now we're gonna just shape it by pushing it out here into a rectangle shape, the best that we can. You could do this by hand completely, or you can use a rolling pin. I know some people are definitely against a rolling pin when you're making things that are with pizza dough, but you know, I think it makes it a little bit easier, so I usually do. All right, that looks good. I try to get the rectangle to be about 14 inches by 20 inches, okay? First thing I do is lay down the egg. Now, of course, you could lay it this way too if you wanted. And you'll see here now why I put it into 2, because I can get the other half right over here. There we go. Now, the next thing I do is I put on the layer of sauce that I want to use inside the stromboli. Now, one of the differences between a calzone and a stromboli is the way that it's rolled, but also that sauce can go into the stromboli, and usually calzone does not have the sauce in it. Now you can see I did not take all of the ingredients the full length of this like you normally would in a stromboli. And there's a reason for that, because when we go to roll this, some of it's gonna push out. But also I found with the breakfast stromboli that doing just like one roll and bringing it up was better than trying to roll it so that there's dough throughout. I just thought it had a better texture. So I guess technically you could say this is a cross between a stromboli and a calzone. Now, the important part, when we go to roll, you want to make sure, number one, that you're not sticking anywhere. So I just sort of gently lift this up, lift the dough up a little bit, and then I'll take it over here, and now we go to roll. Just roll it, roll it, roll it. Bring these over, roll it, roll it, roll it. Does not have to be perfect, okay? It does not have to be perfect. Tuck in any rollaways here. I also at this point start to kind of tuck in my edges a little bit if I can. These little ends here. Okay, keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, that looks wonderful. Now we're gonna take this piece up and pull it back towards us. And you wanna make sure that you pinch this little edge together. And also you can go down and sort of pinch this together, just mush the dough together so it forms a nice seal. Same on this side. We want to make sure it's sealed really nicely. All right, now take some parchment paper. Make sure that it's going to go end to end here. And we're going to roll this on some parchment paper. Now, really, technically, what I could have done, a little bit easier probably, would have been to move the dough to the parchment paper before I filled it. But I forgot, so we improvise now by doing it just a little bit different than I would ordinarily do. This is where my nursing background comes into play, because basically what I'm doing here is making an occupied bed, believe it or not. So roll your paper about halfway, stick it under the dough as much as you can get it onto the dough, and then gently flip like that, okay? And then unroll this side, and then you can sort of finagle so that your stromboli is in the middle of the parchment paper. There we go. All that nursing knowledge. All right, there is our stromboli. Looks wonderful. Now, obviously, this is a little too big for us to be able to do in the foodie, so I'm gonna be doing it in the oven. However, you could make smaller portions. You could do the same recipe and make smaller little stromboli that fit in there, and it'll be perfectly fine. And I will go over the times and temps for that using air fry if you wanted to do it that way. I'll go over that in my written post. Okay, so now we're good. Now we need to get it on our sheet tray. I've already preheated the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna lift this up onto our tray. It's heavy, it just ripped the paper. Okay. All right, I think that'll be good. I'm gonna trim up some of this. I don't want it to fly over. Even though I'm not using a convection oven, I just wanna trim it up a little bit. So I'm just gonna take some of this off so that there's not so much excess. You don't even have to really bake it on the parchment if you don't want to. I just find it's easier. Sometimes you'll have little leaks. Doesn't matter though. It's not going to affect the outcome on the bottom there too much. But if you have little leaks, it's easier cleanup if you have it on the parchment. All right, we look good. We have a hole here in the top. Guess what? That doesn't matter because we're going to make some more holes in the top here. And I'm just going to go just like this. There we go. Now, we bake it for 20 to 25 minutes until it is nice and crunchy and golden brown. Oh, one last thing I forgot though. We have to do this. Drizzle the top with a little bit of olive oil. Rub it in. This is going to give a really beautiful, beautiful crunch. Take a little bit of salt and just a little bit, like maybe a quarter of a teaspoon. Just put it on top there. That's gonna give some extra flavor. When you bite into it right at first, you're gonna have a nice burst of flavor with the bread. All right, here we go, into the oven. Look at that. It is gorgeous. Now, I will tell you that with about 10 minutes left, so after it had cooked for about 15 minutes, I removed the parchment paper because I did have some moisture coming out. So I must have had like a little hole underneath and some moisture was coming out. So I went ahead and pulled that parchment so it didn't stay against the bottom of the stromboli. Now you just want it to rest for a little bit, so let it cool off. Then we'll get it over to our cutting board and we will slice into it and give it a taste. This looks so amazing. All right, now I'm gonna transfer it to the cutting board just by putting this close by and sort of just, it's easy just to pick it up kind of, okay? Oh my gosh, this looks so good. So I'm gonna cut straight down the middle here and turn it around so that you guys can see it. Look at that. Amazing. I'll go ahead and take this as my piece to try. Oh my gosh. That cheese sauce. Oh, so good. Oh, look at that. Looks amazing. Messy, but amazing. All right, now we'll pretend I cleaned up my cutting board completely, right? And then with the extra sauce, because we didn't use it all, you still have a good cup and a half of sauce left, or at least you should. You can put it on top. You can serve it on the side. You can do whatever you want with it, okay? All right, let's give it a taste. First, let's taste this filling, some of those apples. Oh my gosh. So amazing. So amazing. The egg. Oh, this is so delicious. And then, of course, the crust. Oh my goodness. Wow. This is simply amazing. Now remember, change up the fillings. You could even do a sausage gravy type of breakfast stromboli where you made some sausage gravy, put that in the inside with some eggs, whether you scramble them or do them like I did in a round flat disc, so to speak, kind of like an omelet, not folded. You could do so many different things with this recipe. Of course, you could also make a traditional stromboli by following the same technique, just putting in your Italian meats and your sauce and all that nice shredded cheese. Boy, when you want something different for breakfast and want it to be a little bit fancy, this is definitely it.